They don't hate your joy. They don't envy your success. They can't stand your peace because it reminds them of the war inside themselves they still haven't won. There is a certain stillness you carry now. It's not loud. It doesn't wave its arms for attention. It's the kind of stillness that comes after storms, after wars, after years of pouring yourself into places that only took from you. That stillness is what they can't stand. You see, your peace isn't passive. It's not a lack of movement or voice. It's a declaration, one that echoes louder than any scream could. And when you walk into a space, calm, grounded, and centered, you reveal something in others they were trying hard to hide, their restlessness. They can't figure it out. How can you be so composed when the world is so chaotic? How can you smile without being performative? How can you sit in silence without needing to fill the air with noise? It confuses them, irritates them, sometimes even angers them. Not because your peace is wrong, but because it highlights the war within themselves that they still haven't resolved. You become a living contradiction to everything they use to distract themselves. The restless soul thrives on reaction. It's addicted to stimulation, affirmation, conflict, something, anything to drown out the sound of its own emptiness. So when you walk in with still waters, you don't just exist in peace. You expose their noise. Your calm becomes a mirror, not a mirror to flatter, but one that reflects truth. Not the truth they speak, but the truth they suppress. And that, more than anything, unsettles them. There was a time you were like them, wasn't there? Running from your thoughts, confused by silence, mistaking drama for connection, movement for meaning. But then came the breaking, then came the solitude, then came the long nights where you learned how to breathe in pain without letting it steal your presence. You learned that peace is not the absence of pressure, but the presence of perspective. You found peace not by running from discomfort, but by sitting with it until it stopped scaring you. And now you move with different energy. Not louder, not higher, but deeper. And that depth feels like distance to the shallow. You don't rush into every argument. You don't fight to be heard. You don't clap back every time someone throws a stone. Not because you're weak, but because you know that not every attack deserves an answer. Your energy is too expensive to spend proving things to people committed to misunderstanding you. They see this, they feel this, and it gnaws at them because your peace makes them question their performance. Your contentment makes their striving look hollow. Your softness reminds them of the tenderness they've buried. That's what disturbs them. It's not that you're peaceful, it's that your peace reveals. Some people don't know who they are without the noise. They've wrapped their identity around chaos, around being in the middle of something, around being the center of drama, around always being offended or upset. Your peace threatens that identity. It says, you can exist without being triggered. You can be whole without being loud. You can have value without proving it every 5 minutes. And they don't know what to do with that truth, so they call you names. Cold, distant, fake. They label what they don't understand and reject what they're not ready to accept. They try to pull you back into the noise, not because they want to be close, but because they can't stand the sound of your silence. Because when you don't react, they are left with their own echo. But you've learned, you've tasted the freedom of peace, and now you protect it. You guard it like treasure, not with walls, but with wisdom. You don't let just anyone speak into your life anymore. You don't attend every battle you're invited to. You've realized that peace is expensive because it cost you everything you used to be. The version of you that begged, chased, argued, explained, defended. It died in the fire. What rose from those ashes doesn't need applause. It just needs alignment. And so when they fidget around your calm, when they lash out at your quiet, when they misread your stillness as superiority, don't flinch, don't shrink, don't fold, just breathe. Breathe like someone who knows they're not trying to prove anything anymore. Breathe like someone who has finally come home to themselves. Breathe like someone whose peace is not up for debate, because that's what they really can't stand. Not your smile, not your success, not even your strength. What disturbs them is your peace, because it whispers what they've been afraid to hear. You can be whole without the war. You can be free without the fight. And when you truly know yourself, you don't have to shout, you just are. Some people didn't love you. They loved your confusion. They were drawn to your chaos, not because they wanted to help you rise, but because it made them feel tall. They found comfort in your instability, in your hesitation, in your need for them. Your brokenness gave them purpose. Your lack of boundaries gave them access, and your emotional whirlwind gave them a role to play. The savior, the fixer, the one who had it together in comparison. You didn't see it at first. You mistook their attention for care. You thought their constant presence during your weakest moments meant they were loyal. But the truth is, some of them only showed up when you were down. They cheered you on as long as you stayed small enough to need them, lost enough to lean on them, and loud enough to distract yourself from who you were becoming. But something changed. You started doing the work. You started asking deeper questions, sitting with your silence, and confronting your patterns. You pulled back the curtain on your pain, not to entertain others with your struggle, but to understand yourself. You didn't just want to feel better, you wanted to be better. And that decision, simple, powerful, personal, began to shift everything. You stopped seeking validation from the same places that broke your spirit. You stopped performing your pain to get applause from people who only knew how to respond to drama. And in that stillness, in that sacred shift, you saw them clearly. You saw how certain people in your life thrived when you were unwell, how your setbacks made them feel ahead, how your indecision gave them control, how your emotional chaos kept their insecurities hidden in the shadows. Your healing disrupted their comfort. Suddenly, you weren't calling every hour. You weren't over-explaining your worth. You weren't reacting to every slight or validating every complaint. You began to move differently, more grounded, more clear, more inward. And that calm, that clarity, it exposed how dependent they were on your instability. They didn't know how to relate to the healed you. They didn't know how to connect without the crisis. And so some tried to pull you back in. They stirred drama where there was none. They questioned your growth, minimized your peace, mocked your boundaries. They wanted to keep you in the same box because your evolution made them confront the fact that they weren't growing at all. You may have thought they'd cheer you on, that they'd celebrate your glow up, but no, your transformation meant the old dynamics no longer served them. You were no longer the one who said yes to everything, who accepted breadcrumbs, who allowed chaos to lead. And now, they felt irrelevant, not because you pushed them out, but because they never knew how to exist beside your power. And that's the thing no one tells you about healing. It's not just about you. When you rise, it rearranges everything around you. Some people fall away not because you rejected them, but because they were only aligned with your former wounds. The new you, the one that's calm, discerning, self-honoring, doesn't feed the same narratives anymore. And for those who relied on your struggle to feel safe in their own dysfunction, that's terrifying. It's not your fault. You were never meant to stay broken for their benefit. You were never created to keep others comfortable while you bled. Your journey isn't selfish, it's sacred. And if your peace causes someone else discomfort, it only means they found too much identity in your unrest. They needed your chaos to feel stable. They needed your insecurity to feel powerful. They needed your confusion to avoid confronting their own. But now you know, now you see, and there's no going back. You've learned to sit with yourself, to enjoy your own company, to love your own silence. You've come to understand that the real ones won't need your crisis to stay close. The real ones will walk with you in the light, not just stand by you in the shadows. And those who fade, let them. Because if your chaos was their comfort, then your peace is your protection. You don't owe anyone the version of you that was always falling apart. You don't need to dim your light to make others feel okay in the dark. Let your healing be whole. Let your peace be loud. Let your boundaries be clear. Because those who were only present when you were in pieces were never truly with you. They were with your pain. And now that the pain is leaving, so are they. That's not loss, that's revelation, that's freedom. Your peace is a revolution. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply is. And that terrifies people who were once able to influence you by chaos, by fear, by guilt, by noise. When you stop reacting, you disrupt the very control system that once kept you bound. Because what they really controlled wasn't your life. It was your nervous system, your triggers, your silence, your guilt. And when you found peace, you unplugged from all of it. They say they want you calm. They say they want you healed. But the truth is, many people only know how to connect through drama. They only know how to stay important by being needed in your lowest moments. Your peace removes the stage. Your peace says, I don't need you to manage me anymore. I've met myself. That threatens the dynamic. Control doesn't always look like shouting or slamming doors. Often it wears the face of concern. It shows up as fake wisdom, unsolicited advice, passive-aggressive questions. It's that tone that sounds like care, but carries a knife. Are you sure you're okay? You seem different lately. Don't you miss how things used to be? What they're really saying is, I can't reach you where you are now, and I hate that. Because when you were overwhelmed, confused, reactive, they knew what to do with you. You were predictable, moldable. They could push a button and get a response. They could throw a guilt trip and see you fold. But now you pause, now you breathe. Now you smile without explanation. And that peace, that non-reactive presence, that drives them mad. You see, control thrives on emotional chaos. It needs you to doubt yourself, to overthink, to question your worth. That's where it gains ground. That's where it manipulates. But your peace creates space between stimulus and response. It gives you back your time, your clarity, your power, and that power is not for sale anymore. Some of them will try to provoke you, not because they hate you, but because they can't stand the version of you they can't manipulate. They'll poke, prod, test the boundaries. They'll bring up old wounds, hoping for old reactions. But the difference now is, you see it, you recognize the play, and you don't dance to that rhythm anymore. You used to bend, you used to fold, you used to explain your every choice, every decision, every boundary. You wanted to be understood. You didn't want to be the problem. But peace has taught you that you can be misunderstood and still be aligned. You can be calm and still be firm. You don't have to yell to be strong. You just have to stop apologizing for your no. And let's be honest, some people aren't mad that you've changed. They're mad that they no longer have access to the old version of you, the one who always said yes, the one who felt guilty for resting, the one who jumped through hoops for people who never showed up for you. That version is gone. And what remains is a person who understands that inner stillness is non-negotiable. They try to say you've changed. Of course you have. You had to. Peace isn't something you stumble into. It's something you build, brick by brick, boundary by boundary. And anyone who feels your peace as a threat was never looking for your wholeness. They were looking for control disguised as care. You owe no one your access if they've proven they can't handle your alignment. Because peace is not just about meditating or lighting candles. It's about choosing yourself without guilt. It's about no longer letting people dictate how you feel about your own choices. It's about no longer performing worthiness for people who didn't even see you. It's not arrogance, it's not coldness, it's clarity. When you are peaceful, truly peaceful, you make decisions from a centered place. You don't rush, you don't chase, you don't prove, you simply choose. And that authority, the quiet kind, is something controlling people can't stand, because they were counting on your noise to stay in charge. They were counting on your uncertainty to feel powerful. They were counting on your wounds to keep the leash around your neck. But you cut it, quietly, without a scene, without a grand announcement. One day, you just stopped giving them the reaction. You stopped explaining your piece to people committed to misunderstanding it. You stopped shrinking to make them feel comfortable. And from that moment on, their grip was gone. They'll call you distant now, aloof, detached. But what you are is free. You are no longer a puppet in their performance. You are no longer a character in their story. You have written your own, and in it, you are calm, whole, still, and in control of you. That's what they fear most. Not that you've become someone else, but that you finally become yourself. Your peace didn't happen by accident. It wasn't gifted or handed down. You didn't wake up one morning with serenity written across your spirit. No, this peace was earned, fought for, bled for. It came after the nights you cried yourself to sleep, after the days you questioned if you'd ever be whole again, after the hours spent sitting with emotions no one else could see. This peace is not a decoration, it is a declaration. I have healed enough to hold myself steady. And that's exactly what makes some people uncomfortable, because your peace doesn't just make you quiet, it makes a statement. Without saying a word, you remind people that healing is possible, that they too could choose to confront what they keep running from, that they too could grow, could evolve, could let go of who hurt them. But the truth is, many people don't want healing. They want habits, they want cycles. They want familiar pain because it feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. You represent what they've been avoiding. Your calm doesn't just soothe a room, it reflects it. And for those who are still swimming in unresolved trauma, your stillness feels like a confrontation. They can't make sense of how you're not bitter anymore, how you can speak about what broke you without trembling, how you no longer flinch when their name is mentioned. They confuse your peace with forgetfulness, when in fact, it is forgiveness. It is release. It is knowing that healing doesn't erase the wound. It gives it a place to rest without bleeding into every corner of your life. You are the living proof that it's possible to face the darkest parts of yourself and still come out with light. And people who haven't done that work will either be inspired by you or intimidated by you. But one thing they won't be is indifferent. Because true healing shifts the atmosphere. It shifts how you carry yourself, how you respond, how you love. It creates a new rhythm, one that doesn't dance to pain anymore. You used to carry your trauma like armor, hardened, defensive, on edge. You braced for betrayal, even in moments of peace, because your nervous system didn't trust calm. And who could blame you? Life had taught you that calm was temporary, a trick before the next wave. But slowly, steadily, you reprogrammed the fear. You built new habits. You told yourself a different story. And now your shoulders are lighter. Now your presence feels safe. Now you don't feel the need to control every outcome or read between every line. You've learned that healing is not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about making sure it no longer defines your future. Some people are confused by this version of you. They try to trigger the old you just to see if you'll react the way you used to. They want you angry, loud, crying, apologizing, because that's the only version of you they ever knew. but you've evolved. And evolution is disruptive. It rearranges dynamics. It shows people the gap between where they are and where they could be. Your peace is not passive. It is a product of choice. You chose not to pass on what hurt you. You chose to sit with uncomfortable truths instead of projecting them onto others. You chose to stop seeking revenge and start seeking restoration. You chose to leave the battlefield even when no one else laid down their weapons. That is power. That is growth. It's not that you're emotionless. You still feel. You still remember. But your emotions don't control you now. They inform you. You don't need to yell to express pain. You don't need to fight to prove worth. Your very presence, rooted and unshaken, says enough. And the people who understand healing will feel it. They'll know it. They'll honor it. But those who don't, they'll say you're too quiet now, that you don't care, that you're disconnected. What they really mean is they can't recognize you without your wounds on display. They can't engage with you now that you don't lead with brokenness. Your wholeness makes them question their own reflection, and rather than face it, they blame the mirror. Don't shrink for their comfort. Don't dim to meet them in the dark. Keep standing in the light you fought for. You earn this peace, and it's not your job to explain how. Let your life be the evidence. Let your joy be the proof. Let your calm be the message. Healing is possible, because if you can make it through all you've endured and still come out speaking softly, walking gently, and loving fully, then healing isn't just real. It's transformational, and you are the living proof. They poke, they prod, they throw bait in your direction, waiting, hoping, needing you to bite, but you don't, not anymore. You've seen what it costs. You've felt the emotional exhaustion, the sleepless nights, the way your spirit would tremble after every confrontation. You've watched how some people thrive on chaos like it's oxygen, and how they drag others into the fire just to keep themselves warm. But now you're different. Now you've learned the sacred art of not responding. You've made a quiet, powerful decision. You will no longer participate in their drama, and that decision offends them, not because they genuinely need you to fix something, but because they need your reaction to validate their performance. Drama is a performance after all. It requires an audience, a supporting cast, someone to argue with, someone to prove wrong. When you step off that stage, the lights go out. The show can't go on. And to people who find identity in their chaos, that feels like abandonment. They don't understand that your silence isn't coldness, it's clarity. You no longer need to involve yourself in every misunderstanding, every passive-aggressive comment, every storm they try to stir. You no longer hand over your peace just to feel temporarily seen. That was the old you, the one who believed that being involved meant being valued, the one who thought that if you didn't engage, you were weak or selfish or afraid. Now you know better. You've learned that your energy is currency, and not everyone can afford your attention. You've come to understand that not all chaos deserves your commentary, and not all battles are worth the scars. There's strength in walking away. There's wisdom in holding your tongue. There's victory in refusing to descend into the same pit someone else is trying to pull you into. And of course, they'll say you've changed. Of course, they'll say you're fake now, or too enlightened, or think you're better than everyone else. But what they're really saying is this: I no longer have control over how you feel. What they're really mourning is not your closeness, but your compliance. Your refusal to be emotionally available for their chaos makes them feel powerless, and power was all they ever wanted from you. They'll try every trick in the book. They'll bring up the past. They'll twist your words. They'll play the victim and cast you as the villain, because drama needs conflict to survive, and when you don't engage, they have to create it. But your peace doesn't play those games anymore. Your growth is not performative, it's protective. And your silence, that's not retreat, that's strategy. You're not ignoring the issue. You're choosing a higher frequency. You're not scared of conflict. You've just stopped entertaining confusion. You're not distant. You're deliberate. Because you know that every time you choose peace over pettiness, calm over conflict, maturity over mess, you take one more step into your power. You've also learned that not every insult deserves a response. Not every shady remark needs to be addressed. Some people aren't looking for truth, they're looking for attention. And you've grown past giving away your presence to anyone who demands it. You don't need to have the last word. You don't need to win the argument. You don't even need them to understand your point of view. Peace means letting go of needing to be right, especially with people who are committed to being wrong. They don't know what to do with you now. You used to get loud. You used to chase clarity. You used to give second and third chances in hopes that maybe this time they'd get it. But now you give yourself closure. Now you prioritize your nervous system. Now you protect your name by refusing to sit at every table you're invited to, because healing has taught you that not everything needs to be fixed. Not everyone wants to change. And not every fire requires your water. Some things must be left to burn. Some people must be left to wrestle with the storm they keep summoning. So they'll rage, they'll gossip, they'll twist the narrative, and still, you won't respond. Not because you're passive, but because you finally realized your peace is priceless. You don't rise to bait. You don't react. You reflect. You don't fight to be heard. You listen to yourself first. And that self, whole, grounded, aware, is not interested in old cycles wearing new masks. You're not better than them. You're just better than who you used to be. And that, more than anything, is what they can't stand. There's a certain kind of joy that doesn't come from applause, titles, or validation. It doesn't arrive with the approval of a crowd. It shows up quietly in the early morning light, in the way you breathe softer now, in the way your laughter is no longer a performance but a release. You found that kind of joy, the joy that is rooted, internal, unshakable. And the moment you did, some people around you changed. Not because your joy hurt them, but because it didn't require them. And that shook the ground they were standing on. They were used to you dimming your light, shrinking yourself, asking for permission to be happy. They were comfortable with the version of you that needed their presence, their input, their green light, before you smiled too wide or celebrated too boldly. As long as your happiness came from them, or at least passed through them, they could tolerate it. But the moment you stopped asking, the moment you found joy without their involvement, something shifted and they felt it. You became a mirror, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reflects. Your joy began to highlight the lack in others, not because you boasted or rubbed it in, but because your freedom revealed their cages. Your light showed their shadows. And that's the thing about real joy. It's radiant. It doesn't need to shout to be noticed. It just is. And people who are used to controlling the room, people who are used to being the source of everyone else's energy, don't know what to do with someone who's no longer dependent on their mood. They say things like, "You've changed," or "You think you're too good now." But what they mean is, "You no longer ask for my approval to feel full." You no longer hand them the keys to your emotional weather. You no longer explain why you're glowing. And that independence, that sovereignty, feels like betrayal to people who once thrived on your neediness. The joy you carry now came from hard-won battles. It came from heartbreak that taught you your worth. It came from seasons where you had nothing and no one, but still found a reason to smile. It came from letting go of people you loved because you finally loved yourself more. It came from learning that silence can be sacred, solitude can be strength, and you are enough even when nobody is clapping. They didn't see those nights. They didn't hear the sobs in the dark or the affirmations you whispered over your own soul when no one else was speaking life into you. They only see the result, and it makes them uncomfortable because they weren't part of the process. And if they weren't part of the process, they believe they shouldn't have to deal with the product. But your joy is not up for negotiation. It's not a group project. It doesn't require co-signatures or outside validation. You no longer chase people to witness your light. You no longer adjust your volume based on someone else's comfort. You don't feel bad for being okay anymore. And that, more than anything, is what makes them uneasy. Because you've stopped trying to convince anyone you deserve to be happy. You've realized you don't need to earn it, justify it, or water it down to be palatable. There was a time when you thought joy had to look a certain way, that it had to be loud and glittery, posted and praised. But now you know joy is peace. It's boundaries. It's walking away from what doesn't grow you. It's saying no without explanation. It's being excited without sharing the details. It's choosing who gets access and not feeling guilty about the locks you've installed on your spirit. You've tasted the kind of joy that doesn't fluctuate with opinions, that stays when the room empties, that follows you into silence and smiles in the mirror. And that kind of joy, it's untouchable. It's also offensive to those who only know happiness that's borrowed, conditional, or performative. Some people won't clap when you win, not because you don't deserve it, but because they thought they should be part of the reason you made it. And when you arrive full, they don't know how to handle it. You're no longer asking them to fill you up. You're not waiting for the invite. You've created your own celebration, and it doesn't require their RSVP. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them whisper in corners about how you changed, because you did. And your change didn't come to seek revenge. It came to seek release. You let go of the need to be liked in order to be free. You let go of the story that said joy must be earned through struggle. And now you walk differently. You glow differently. You live differently, and you don't need their permission to keep going, because the kind of joy you have now can't be revoked by someone else's discomfort. It lives in your bones. It's in how you exhale without tension. It's in how you rest without guilt. It's in how you no longer perform pain just to be accepted. You found joy without their permission, and you're going to keep it without their validation. That's not pride, that's liberation. In a world that profits from urgency, noise, and distraction, your peace is an act of rebellion. In a culture addicted to conflict and attention, to be calm is to be countercultural. Peace is not weakness, it's resistance. It's refusing to perform stress for people who expect you to be anxious. It's choosing silence when everyone else is shouting. It's knowing your value so deeply that you don't have to fight to prove it anymore. They don't understand it. They call you too quiet, too distant, too calm, because they can't figure out how you're not crumbling under the pressure they created. They expect you to panic when things don't go your way. They expect you to spiral when they withdraw support. They expect you to lash out, to explain yourself, to beg for clarity, to rush into the drama, but you don't. And your refusal to engage becomes louder than any scream could. Peace isn't passive. It takes work. It takes unlearning everything you were taught about survival and learning instead how to be rooted. It takes recognizing that not every war deserves your presence. It takes trusting that silence doesn't mean surrender, it means security. You know who you are. You know what you deserve. You're no longer available for chaos just to make others comfortable. Some people don't know how to relate to peace. They grew up in noise. They build their relationships around tension. They think love is loud, that value is earned by exhaustion. They believe if you're not sacrificing your well-being, you're not really showing up. And so when you move with grace, when you speak with clarity, when you choose your battles carefully, they feel disoriented. They can't use your reaction to fuel their dysfunction anymore. They say things like, "You've gone soft," or "You don't care anymore." But they're wrong. You care deeply. You just don't carry everything. You protect your energy now. You rest when needed. You no longer feel guilty for not being everywhere at once. You've learned that the strongest thing you can do is choose peace when everyone around you chooses panic. Your peace doesn't require an audience. It doesn't perform. It doesn't prove. It exists within you. And because of that, no one can take it away. That frustrates people who once depended on your chaos to feel in control. When you were emotionally triggered, they could manage you. When you were constantly explaining yourself, they felt powerful. But peace doesn't explain itself. Peace doesn't chase. Peace doesn't ask permission. You're no longer jumping into arguments to defend your perspective. You're no longer obsessed with being understood. You're no longer triggered by every false story told about you. You've come to realize that when people lie, it says more about their character than your truth. You've realized that peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of perspective. It's easy to yell. It's easy to clap back. It's easy to match energy. What's rare is someone who refuses to be moved unless it's intentional. What's rare is someone who can sit in chaos and not become it. That's you now. That's who you've become. And not everyone can handle that version of you. People who once thrived on drama will try to provoke you. They'll twist your silence into arrogance. They'll bait you with conflict. They'll manufacture chaos and act surprised when you don't respond. That's because peace ruins their performance. Peace makes it impossible for them to manipulate your mood. You don't owe your reaction to every attack. You don't owe your energy to every crisis. You've learned how to pause, how to breathe, how to walk away without resentment. That's growth. That's strength. That's what it looks like when someone chooses freedom over friction. And yes, it will confuse them. They're still expecting the old you, the one who panicked under pressure, the one who overextended, the one who mistook constant movement for purpose. But that person is gone. In their place stands someone who knows the power of staying grounded, someone who's no longer trying to win battles that were never theirs. You've realized now that peace is not quiet because it's small. Peace is quiet because it's secure. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need agreement. It just is. So don't be surprised if your peace stirs discomfort. That's what happens when someone refuses to be controlled. That's what happens when someone heals and stops performing pain. That's what happens when someone refuses to play a role they've outgrown. You didn't choose peace to prove a point. You chose it to protect your soul. You chose it because you've lived in chaos long enough to know it doesn't serve you. And now you walk differently. You speak differently. You move with intention. And that, more than any argument, confrontation, or explanation, is the loudest rebellion of all. So the next time they side-eye your stillness, question your quiet, or throw stones at your sanctuary, just remember, their discomfort is not your disturbance. Their chaos is not your calling. Your peace is proof that you didn't just survive, you transcended. Let them talk, let them misunderstand, let them wrestle. But you keep your crown, you keep your calm, and most of all, you keep your peace.